Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our session on blockchain for sustainability, blockchain opportunities in the livestock value and supply chains. My name is Stacy Ferris. I'm a director at FinSuite Accounting. I help with the back office accounting for startup companies in the Web3 space. I also teach blockchain and crypto accounting at the University of Maryland. I'm very excited today to be speaking with Chris Light and Max Makuvis of eLivestock Global, and Stephen Nielsen, who's the founder of Unisat. Both eLivestock and Unisat are leveraging blockchain to create global traceability of perishable foods and cattle. Today, these three will discuss the need for livestock traceability, the application of eLivestock's solution in Zimbabwe, and other examples of traceability within agriculture. Before we move on to our distinguished speakers, I'd like to give you a little background on each of them. Max Makuvis is the founder of eLivestock Global. African cattle has been Max's life work and passion. Originally trained as an accountant, in 1997, he founded the Makara Cattle Company. Over the last 26 years, he has become intimately familiar with the challenges and needs of cattle management. Max is involved in many areas of the cattle industry and has embarked on many projects and programs involving rural communities, working with these groups on the genetic improvement, training, product supply, and traceability of their cattle. In 2018, recognizing the need to take a more global position on cattle, Max joined the Southern African Regional Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, where he is still the vice chairman. This roundtable is part of the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. Working with this council led Max to explore using blockchain to satisfy the need for reliable data to achieve sustainability and traceability over African cattle, and ultimately to the founding of eLivestock Global. Now, Chris Light is the CEO of eLivestock Global. Based out of Maryland in the United States, he has nearly 3 decades of experience growing and leading startups across the world. He's also very well known in the international development community, having worked with major donors in support of all USAID bureaus, including agency initiatives. He has served as part of the technology management group for USAID, both for the .com Alliance and as part of the consulting information services team. Chris spent 3 years on site in Africa as a technology advisor for agriculture and environment in USAID's Africa Bureau. His work has been recognized at the White House and embassy level for the Department of State, together with the administrator level for USAID. Finally, Stephen Nielsen. Stephen Nielsen is the CEO and founder of Unisat, a Web3 supply chain traceability platform, which leverages the power of blockchain, AI, and IPv6 technology to provide a transparent, secure, and efficient system for tracking products from their origin to the end consumer. Stephen has brought over 3 decades of professional and international IT experience, technical SAP knowledge, and ERP blockchain integrations into building out this platform. Unisat ensures the authenticity and quality of products while also promoting sustainable and ethical practices throughout the supply chain. Their digital product passports offer real-time insights into product journeys, enabling businesses to prove product quality, origin, ingredients, and sustainable practices. Now, without any further ado, Chris, I'd like to hand it over to you to talk about the need for livestock traceability.
Thanks for that comprehensive introduction, Stacy. It's having worked 25 years in the global development space and working with agriculture, environment, and economic growth as my primary sort of strategic areas. In 2019, there were lightning talks at the ICTforAG event, and I was asked to give one on blockchain, and it sort of started this whole journey where turned out Max was in the United States looking at traceability in cattle and trying to get traction. We then decided to do a startup. The whole point of this is to talk about innovation. We decided to do a startup where after that we went to talk with MasterCard and go up to find some venture capitalists, and sort of the idea was to do a moonshot for Zimbabwe. 2019 was the 50th anniversary of the moon landing, so it was sort of a very inspirational time to be doing that. We won best. We launched in June 2021. We won best blockchain solution in Africa, the award for that, and from Digital Banker. We also I spent 3 years as a co-chair for digital development for the Society for International Development. We also won the United States annual conference award for innovation. We've received very positive press. We've talked with a number of donors about our solution, including sort of Gates, and done some work with Gates on artificial intelligence, other things. We've been a case study at the London School of Economics. We've been featured at MIT. We're working our way through the DC universities, which is how Stacy and I first connected at the University of Maryland Blockchain Accelerator. The whole idea, I mean, this conference is about basically wanting to be local and being innovative and getting to small scale. Our solution does all of that. I'm not going to steal too much of Max's thunder because he's going to go into like why Zimbabwe was such a great business case. But the whole idea of traceability is a great way to get funds to the last mile, to the smallholder farmer. It's an interesting time for blockchain. Sort of, I used to say that 1 year of blockchain or Web3 was like 5 years of regular tech, but that has shifted to artificial intelligence. It's an interesting time, but if you look at what's going on with Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX, the fraud aspect is being outed and taken care of. But it's also 15 years. On the plus side, it's also 15 years since the Satoshi white paper that was last week. So there's pluses and minuses. I think we're in the proof mode, and one of the things that consistently comes up, we were on a panel at the DC Startup Week on all about like real use cases. This keeps coming up with Livestock, and I think also with Unisat, that we're all about real use cases. We're not the froth, we're not the hype, we're basically solutions that work. The other thing is I think in internet, I'll just close and hand it back to Stacey, I guess, on the way to Max. Innovation and development is you're not going to get to solving the SDGs without innovation, and private sector is one of the ways to do that. So I was pleased to see that Farmerline, who I first met at MIT, is also here. And if you think about Zipline, which is a multi-billion-dollar startup, I guess there's value in putting line in your company, Max. So maybe one of our next companies will throw line in there to get a higher valuation. I think accelerators and these challenges, and also the government as a funder for the prizes, that's really one of the ways that we'll get there. So back to you, Stacey.
Actually, Chris, before we move on, I'd actually like you to maybe say a few words about, you've been working in technology and in development of IT systems and platforms for 30 years now.
Yep.
And so it's the same question that I asked you at the other conference, and which I'd like you to.
Did I duck it or
why?
No, go ahead.
Why do you need to use blockchain for this? Why can't we use existing technology? That's the question that's always asked, right? Why do you need to use blockchain? What is the use case for why blockchain in supply chains is superior to other options?
We think blockchain is really good at traceability. So we found we actually evaluated a number of different and Stefan may want to answer this as well. We evaluated a number of different solutions, and that's how we wound up with blockchain. So that was how we got to blockchain in this case. It's interesting. It's something we're always reevaluating. Maybe their things will move to AI or other, but no. Okay. So we're going to stay with, we find that blockchain is really good at supply chains. So and really good at traceability, and it works as a great little ledger. And I'm saying this as a non-accountant. Max may want to add something there. So is that okay?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great answer. And I think part of that answer too is that that in a global economy, you need to have trust among actors, and there's always been problems of fraud and trust. Like, how do I know I can trust you in this data? And I think blockchain is kind of the linchpin in providing some trust, so that strangers and different actors across the world can work together in a more secure and sustainable way. That having been said, Max, can you talk to us about the Zimbabwe use case and how you applied it specifically in the cattle industry there and with your own company?
Yeah. Thanks very much, Stacey, for the introduction. Thanks, Chris, for what you said about the company. I think what's important is to realize that when we talk about eLivestock, we're talking about something that is built for the smallholder farmer which can be replicated and scaled up, but can also work with a large-scale farmer. I've been in the livestock industry for over 25 years, and it's about simple solutions for farmers. We don't want to build a Rolls-Royce when we need a Toyota and a Corolla. And I think one of the biggest problems we've found is that there are a lot of Rolls-Royces out there that are very expensive, that aren't specifically tailored towards the little man, and that he has no access to. And what happens is the front end of the world moves ahead, but the back end of the world gets left behind. And what we're trying to do is make sure that no one gets left behind. 20% of the world's cattle are in Africa. So, it's a good place to start to make sure that, 1/5 of the world's cattle get a seat at the table, as opposed to constantly being left behind. But let me come back to Zimbabwe as a country. We're sitting on between 5.4 to 5.6 million head of cattle. And it's interesting, that's a number that we've been moving around for a number of years. But what I looked at with Chris is that what is the actual number? We need to get ourselves to a point where we can say, we've got all the cattle, they're all in a system, we can account for them. And so we said, look, let's have something where not only can we know where the cattle are, let's deal with ownership. Who owns the cattle? At the moment, it can be on a little piece of paper where to confirm that you own the animal, you have to go and get an affidavit to say, yes, this is my animal, signed by somebody, then it goes to the vet department. What if you could have an animal with a license plate? I mean, this is a tag. It's a license plate for an animal, and the animal will have that for its life. Car changes ownership, license plate remains the same. We have, certain practices like tilling the land, marriage, and things like that, where cattle are used, and cattle are used as a store of wealth. And if the owner understands that he has this animal as a store of wealth, he can then have skin in the game. Zimbabwe, like most countries, have collateral registries and there are laws that say cattle can be used as collateral. Your fundamental problem is the bank is saying, how do I know which animal I'm taking as security, but I'm not physically taking it away, that when I go to the farmer next door who wants to borrow money, I'm not seeing the same cattle. And it becomes the same cattle being used for the same amount of borrowing. Next thing is disease monitoring. Where are these diseases? Where are they breaking out? What are the big diseases in Africa? Foot and mouth disease, anthrax. Where's it taking place? Can we get the government to, or not can we get, can the government respond quickly? The first case is reported, they see it on their computers, it's a communicable disease, it's a notifiable disease, they can quickly rush and deal with that instance. The next thing, and this is peculiar to Zimbabwe, is beef exports. Now, Zimbabwe is one of 4 African countries that has duty and tariff-free, unrestricted exports of beef to the European Union and the United Kingdom. However, for that to happen, there's certain things that need to be done. And one of them is a traceability system. So what's hampering us from getting one of the best advantages we'll ever get as a nation within the beef industry is a traceability system. So that's why we came up with the system that we've come up with. And I'll move on to say, actually, what is e-livestock? I mean, what does it really do? In its most simple form, it records life events of cattle. So there's an animal with its license plate, and events that happen to that animal in its life are recorded. The first thing is ownership. Who owns the animal? It's running around, running amok with a tag on its ear, either in somebody's cornfield, maize field, or on a national highway, creating havoc, causing cars to swerve. You can identify who the owner of that animal is through its ear tag, through a central registry. The animal has a description and its attributes. So, for example, if it's a brown cow with white spots, in the system, it says brown cow with white spots, and it has the tag. So you scan that tag, you can prove that it says it should be a brown cow with white spots. Yes, it is. Okay. You also have the ability to have the animal in herds. So even within a family dynamic, and this is not to be taken as that's what happens, but you may have a situation where in the rural areas, certain cattle belong to the husband and certain cattle belong to the wife. in the system, you can separate those animals out. The next thing is, in Africa, we have a lot of points of aggregation where all the cattle go on a weekly or once every 2 weeks basis. When they go there, you start doing health records of them. When you dip them, they just go past, and we use a scanner to scan the ear tag. The animals go past, and that information is recorded. Because we're in Africa, there are certain areas that are far away from Wi-Fi or mobile networks. So the app actually works in an on-offline environment. So the farmer can do whatever work needs to be done offline. And then when he gets to within a Wi-Fi signal, the information can then be uploaded through to the servers, through to the blockchain, and so on and so forth. Another great thing of what it does in terms of life events is location. So when you scan the animal, because you've got a scanner and a smartphone, it geotags the location of the transaction, let's call it. So you're injecting an animal with an antibiotic. It will say Max injected this animal with this antibiotic at this time in this specific location. That goes to your traceability. So when we're now exporting our animals, we can go onto a Google Maps, for example, and say, this is where this animal spent its life. It's within a green zone. It's acceptable to go to an abattoir and be registered as an export animal. What we have is the phone mobile application is for inputting data. So you put your data in there and it stores it and uploads it. We then have a dashboard, which is web-based. And on the dashboard, it gives you all the farm information, including head counts and where the farm is. You can have multiple farms if you're a corporate with multiple users. And you can transfer between herds and between owners. The great thing is, in a small scale environment, it's easy for you to add each animal one by one. I'm currently sat 60 miles from the nearest town. I've got 7,500 cattle on this ranch. For me to go one by one and put them in, it's going to take a long time. We've created a CSV upload where you can put all the details into it, send it across to us, and we can then upload it to the system for you. The other thing is we have a lot of graphical information on the dashboard. One of the things as a cattle farmer myself, I want to see certain information very quickly. So when did we last dip our cattle? When did we last dose them? When was the last time we had an injury in the thousands of cattle? You can then drill down later, but something that sticks out, that catches you first thing in the morning, where you can then drill down into. So there is graphical information on animals relating to dipping, dosing, treatments, injuries, and so on and so forth. You could also do stock counts, which are very important because an animal is assigned to an owner and to a herd. So if I'm trying to cheat the banks and say, do a stock count, and I bring in 5 of Stacey's animals into my herd, in the report, it'll say there were 100 animals for sure, but only 95 of them should have been there. These 5 don't belong to the place where they were counted. So that helps with theft and the police. And in December, we're bringing in the second part of the app where we now will onboard the police, the vets, both government and private vets. But we're very, very, very cognizant of privacy laws. So a policeman will be able to scan an animal and say, that's the owner and that's his phone number. His other details, the policeman will have to get in touch with the owner to get those details from him because of the privacy laws. So why did we develop the system? I'm going to keep quiet just now because otherwise I'll keep talking forever and ever and a day. But we developed the system because we wanted something that could be used by any farmer in the world. From me, who has stewardship of over 15,000 cattle, to a guy who's only got 5. But we also created it in such a way that you can be a member of the platform. So someone can manage that for you, be it the government veterinarian in certain countries where you have a situation, government is responsible for dipping. They can do all the punching in of all the information, and all you need is a smartphone. Currently, our tags, the RFID, they have the number and it's the RFID which you can scan. Down here, we have a QR code. I'm sorry, the light is absolutely awful. A QR code, which will right now take you to our website. The next phase is to make that QR code the number of the animal. So the farmer can now, without having to buy an expensive scanner, which is mainly going to be used for people with larger herds, he can now scan it with his smartphone, his own animal. and get that information, do whatever procedures he's doing. Certain procedures are only allowed to be done by vets. Those are national rules. That's not a problem. The system caters for that. And he can look at how many cattle he's got, when they last dipped, and he can now have access to the formalized system and then go to the bank and borrow money against it, because every time it scans the animal, it geolocates it. The bank can then say if the animal moves more than 10 kilometers from the registered house of the farmer, it gets an alert. Or if it's scanned 500 kilometers away, the bank gets an alert. So the banks will now be in a better position to start lending to farmers. And I think, to say this really crazy, it allows the farmer to not only have skin in the game, but to become more commercial and less reliant on waiting for a specific project in order to earn revenue. He can make money doing what he's done all his life, as opposed to, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's let him do what he's been doing. Let's polish it and help him on that challenge and journey. Sorry, thank you very much.
That was wonderful, Max. That was great. So I want to ask you one other thing, though. I understand. I think Chris might have tried to explain this to me at some point, and maybe you can tell us a little more about this. And you kind of hinted at it a little bit, that the way cattle is treated and used in Africa and Zimbabwe, it's a little different maybe than what we might be accustomed to perhaps in the United States or Europe, where cattle are sometimes viewed as like retirement savings and a long-term store of value because of the instability sometimes of government or currency. And so cattle are very, very important to the economy, right?
Cattle are a store of wealth. I mean, I can talk to Zimbabwe specifically. There's over $2 billion of cattle not on any register or being collateralized. Can you imagine you could open up the economy for $2 billion overnight through a traceability system that is sanctioned, obviously, by the monetary authorities? So animals are used as a store of wealth, but that's because a lot of it harks back to old colonial practices where you were only allowed to have so many cattle if you were unmarried, so many if you were married. The formal market was controlled. But what's happened is we now need to have the farmer becoming part of the program. As I said, we have 20% of the world's cattle in Africa. We contribute to less than 8% of the world's consumption of beef. And I'm not just talking about animals in Africa eaten by Africans. I'm talking any animal that originates in Africa, wherever it's eaten in the world. 8%. It's about time we got into the game. I mean, we have advantages and competitive edges based on our meat, based on our practices. Guess what? We're free range. We're organic. We're not big into feedlotting. So with our Gen Z friends and our millennials, we're doing our bit for the planet. And all we're saying is, through traceability, we can join the global market. Without it, we can't.
Yeah, it sounds like what you're really helping to do is through this solution is you help to open up the African resources to the world and make it more accessible, but still owned by African entrepreneurs, right? They have the ownership, they receive the benefits, as opposed to foreigner coming in, investing, and taking all of that money out of the economy. This allows for Africa to interact with the world and receive the benefits of their own labor, their own resources.
Correct. And if I could just add finally, a final thing, I know you haven't asked the question, but you know, how good would it be to be sitting in New York, have a steak with a QR code in it, you zap that QR code, and you see the farmer who raised that animal, and you know that you're contributing to his livelihood directly. That for me is a dream come true. If we can get there, I'll be the happiest man on the planet.
I think that's really important, especially when we're in this era of people, you know, you see beef packaged and products that are packaged at the store, and you're like, I have no idea where this came from. I don't know if it came from Kansas or from Brazil. I don't know how this animal was treated. Was it like, you know, on a feedlot and extremely stressed before this happened, you know, because that we all know from science that affects the quality of the food, and it affects the quality of and the health of the people who are consuming that, right? So we all want better traceability and better products. And now let's talk to Stephen. You've been so patiently waiting your turn here. So please tell us about how Unisat is beyond the cattle industry, what you're doing with agriculture.
Yeah, sure. It's a super interesting discussion here, and how cattle can be handled. But I want to go back to your first question that you have there. Why blockchain? Yeah, it's not just a fancy word or fancy technology. So, but there is a big distinction to do between blockchain and blockchain, like everything. But what's important to know here is that there are something called a public blockchain, which we are using and Chris are using. And there are these so-called private blockchains that many other are trying to use out today. But the benefit or the important thing here is to understand that to use blockchain, and the reason why we use blockchain, the public blockchain, is that it's a globally distributed system, just like the supply chain is. If we look at the supply chain, you have all these different actors that are creating raw material, that are creating material, the distributor, the retailers, and warehouses, and so on, and all the way out to end consumers consuming this product. This whole supply chain is also a distributed system of different actors who maybe not always trust each other. So by combining the technology blockchain network with distributed as a distributed system with this supply chain that is distributed, we get a very, very good match. And what we can use this for is, as we have been talking about here today, to use this global public blockchain as a secure data layer that every actor in the supply chain can use to store their information and share their information with other actors in the supply chain. So in the case here of cattle, it's ideal to use a blockchain here and use the public blockchain because it's very, very cost efficient, which means that it can be used by a small farmer or fisherman or a small company, but it also scales up to enormously number of transactions to be used by the big companies like Walmart and so on. So it's very important to have this scalability, but at the same time have the cost efficiency that we have in this public blockchain that we are using. So what we are doing in Unisort, we have built a platform, and we're providing a platform for all different industries, because we have the same problem in all industries, if that's food or electronics or clothing or cars or whatever it is. There is a lack of traceability in all industries today. Every company are sitting on their own data silos, and every company can be very efficient and very good in what they are doing. But if you are not sharing the information between them, the end-to-end efficiency from seed to plate, or let's say from seed to plate, is very, very low. The efficiency very low end-to-end, because it's like the whisper game. If I tell you something and you tell Chris and Chris tell Max, the information, the longer that chain is, the less correct the information is in the end. And that's a problem we have with supply chains today. And by using this global public blockchain as a universal source of truth, where you can trust the information, it's very secure and very cost efficient to use, that makes it a perfect system to create something that we call a digital product passport. So like here, we can create, so we have like a QR code like this, a digital product passport, that the same thing as Max showed on the number plate for the cow here, that you can scan, and that takes you to the blockchain. It's not just a web page, it takes you to the blockchain and extracts all the information from the different actors in the blockchain. So from the food manufacturer to the machine manufacturer to the electricity provider to the farmer and the water producer and all of that. So every actor in the supply chain, they add information into this blockchain to prove their information. So the information you get back when you scan this the QR code and get the digital product passport is provable information about the origin of the product, the quality, the ingredients, if it's a product, spare parts, if it's a car or electronics or something like that, or like for a cow here, exactly how has it been treated, what food does have it got, where has it lived, and so on. And we just launched some weeks ago down in Dubai. We have a meat distributor in Dubai who is importing halal meat, halal beef from Australia and from Japan and from other countries. And for them, it's very important because the Wagyu beef has to be grass-fed on specific areas. And as Max mentioned here, that to import to Europe, the cows has to be on a certain fields that are certified by Europe. Same thing with Wagyu beef; they have to be on certain fields, eating certain food and so on to be Wagyu and be certified Wagyu. And these certifications can be enhanced and proven more exactly by having exact knowledge of where they have been, what they have eaten, and so on and so on. So that's the connection with blockchain that we see that Chris and Max is working on here as well.
That's excellent. So to our participants and attendees, if you have any questions, just put them into the Q&A for the question and answer. That was a great answer, Stephen. We have some questions in here about, you know, the security of, say, for instance, an ear tag can be removed by accident or intentionally. And one thing that I just like to point out, because, you know, part of my life and career, I'm a certified fraud examiner. So doing fraud investigation, forensic accounting over litigation and problems. And, you know, when we talk about blockchain, I think initially back, you know, 6-7 years ago, there's a lot of talk about how, oh, blockchain solves fraud, it solves tampering, it prevents that, you don't need an auditor. All of those were kind of overblown, overhyped claims, right? What a blockchain does is the data that's on it is secure, right? And it's permanent,
it's
right?
Sorry.
When we look at systems, and Stephen, I'll ask you to add to this, when we look at systems and we look at, you know, the data going into the system and into the blockchain, you still have, you know, security or control risks that have to be controlled through internal controls. And that's where I get to the point that locks on doors are for honest people who aren't going to try to, you know, break the lock anyway. So if you have someone who's committed to, I'm going to commit fraud, where there's a will, there's a way, kind of, you know. So could you still subvert one of these systems and commit fraud or theft? Yes, you could. However, what's great about having a blockchain is you have an internal ledger that will probably also provide the proof to incriminate and to convict someone if they were to pull off some kind of a fraud.
Exactly.
Stephen,
You're totally right. Blockchain is just like like any database, is that bad information is bad information out. But there's a big difference between a blockchain and a database, is that all the information that is entered into this blockchain is digitally signed by the company or the person who puts the information in there, which make them liable for that information. And you also, yes?
Oh, go on, finish it.
You also get the auditability, as you mentioned. So yes, you can see who entered what, where, and when, and you can see when they changed it or correct it as well. So you have this log of information with the auditability. But we still need the auditors, but we can do the job for auditors much more effective and easier, because we can provide much more secure information in a compromised or aggregated way, so that instead of an auditor has to go through 5, 6, 10 different systems at different locations and so on, it could be very much more efficient that you go into one system and you verify digital signature and you verify with blockchain that, yeah, this person actually said that, and then you can verify, yeah, that's correct, and then you can put your digital signature as an auditor into the blockchain. And now we can continue working on that for the rest of the blockchain. But of course, we can also use other technology like AI or actually machine learning that is analyzing this input that is coming in to see, for a cow, for example, is it realistic that this cow is at this location at this time? Because last week he was 500 miles away, so it's not realistic. And then we can put up an alarm that no, something is strange here. Or like a temperature or a weight. If the weight curve of a cow goes too much or too low, or deviate from normal rates, then we can put in an alarm on that to see that, yeah, here is something strange that someone should check.
And that also allows for the use of AI tools and monitoring, where it can monitor those trends, keep an eye on it, and identify things that need a human attention. So we have a question here, Max. I'm going to ask this to you, and it's again on this area of, can a farmer lie and claim that they did something like a vaccination? Could they fraudulently, scan a tag and say, "Oh yeah, I vaccinated this cow when they haven't"? And how would you protect against that?
They can do that, but the question one has to ask is, why would they do that? Because remember, if you're claiming that you've vaccinated, you're claiming that you've done something you vaccinate to either heal or prevent. So for example, if you vaccinate, say you've vaccinated for foot and mouth disease, alarm bells will go off. If you say that you've given your animal antibiotics every 2 weeks, alarm bells will go off, whether you do it in real terms or not. So you're marking yourself down by claiming to do things you haven't done. So that's the first bit of it. So they can claim to have done some of those things. But remember also, and especially within Africa, there are laws about some of the things you can do. So a foot and mouth vaccine must be administered by a government vet because it's a notifiable national disease. I can't just walk into a shop and say, right, I'm going to start vaccinating animals for anthrax. Alarm bells will go off. So yes, a farmer can lie, but 9 times out of 10, lying in a traceability system is to your own detriment, not to your benefit. And
right.
if the animal, if the animal he's claiming he's dipped it and everything, and it gets to the abattoir and it's covered in ticks or tick infested, or there are lesions under the skin, when that animal is slaughtered, that farmer will be logged. And what will happen is his pricing now, suddenly they say, we're not really keen on buying from you because your animals, you said you've done all these things, but the state of the carcass tells us otherwise. So it's detrimental to him to do that.
And potentially this system allows for a public record where you can see like the history of a farmer, and you can tell, well, they have a history of, not actually taking care of their animals, or this farmer over here, this farm has an immaculate record. So we have more trust, they have more public trust. So I think that allows for that. We have a question here. Do you see a future, and Stephen, maybe you can help answer this. Do you see a future where farmers will be able to manage their own blockchain keys, or will be implementing companies? Will the implementing companies still end up holding keys on behalf of the users? I think what they're referring to is they're talking about wallets, like crypto wallets have the keys that you associate with them. In this case, we're using what I would call an authentication NFT. So it's blockchain without the crypto, really. You use blockchain as your system of record, but the transactions are still valued in fiat dollars or euros or whatever the currency may be. So that being the case, are there still wallets in use, or any cryptographic keys in use on these systems that have to be, custodied by a party?
There are in the blockchain itself, because it's built on digital signatures and hashes and so on. But that's all handled in the back end in the system. So our customers don't know anything about they don't have to know anything about blockchain or keys or cryptos or anything like that. That's just like I don't care if my accounting system has a Microsoft database or an Oracle database in the backend. I don't care. I need an accounting system. So that's what we provide to our customers and users is a system that solves their problems with traceability and proving their products. They don't have to care anything about anything about blockchain or technology in that case at all. So no, there is no key for the users.
Okay, so it doesn't even factor into things because they're not going to be using like a crypto wallet. There's no crypto involved,
no,
and so
not at all.
So you handle that on the back end as just part of the infrastructure for the platform.
Yes, yeah. So we've been talking to a lot of companies about blockchains, and most of them have the misunderstanding that, oh, we have to run some nodes, we have to use some tokens and cryptos, and we have to decide of different protocol and governance and all of that. And Yeah, that's how many are selling this, that they want companies to go together in a consortium and run their own blockchain. Companies are not interested in that. Companies are running their business and they have their problems that they want to solve. They don't want to build a new technology company to run a blockchain. So that's why we are using the public blockchain, as I mentioned. It's not ours. We are not running it. It's running out there just like we have the public internet that we are using right now. It's out there, it's running, it's secure. The public blockchain is out there running for 15 years. It's most secure system in the world, very cost efficient, and yeah, so that's the one we're using.
So I don't think we have any other questions at this point. Are there any other points or aspects that we want to discuss as a group here? You know, it's interesting that, and I think it's a sign of mainstreaming, really, that initially everybody was talking about blockchain, right? And there was a bunch of efforts to try to understand what is blockchain, how does it work? And it's still useful to have that technical understanding at some level to kind of get an idea of, for instance, because it's basically database structure, right? Understanding how your database is structured. And it's also a new way to do databases, right? Databases for the longest time, they're private, they're held, you know, by you. They're siloed. There may or may not be backups. It may or may not be tamper-proof. So, you know, we're moving to this new system on the back end. And I think it's a sign of mainstreaming that we're not using the term blockchain anymore when we talk about these solutions. I mean, yes, that is what's on the back end, but people aren't saying, you know, or selling things as this is a blockchain solution, right? It's just simply, it's more secure. We're using a public ledger, a public record. And we're moving into an era of the internet where that's just going to be the standard, you know. That's
absolutely.
Yeah.
You're so correct. We all know about the hype curve. That is a big hype curve, and like in 2017, 18, we were really on the top where everything was blockchain and it should solve everything. Then it went down. And then it starts to go up, and you get normal adoption with normal companies using real world applications, and that's where we are now. And that's what's so nice about this, that yes, we can use this technology without the hype and benefit from all the good functionality and the good things about it without having to sell blockchain technology.
Now, there's still a need for technical skills. For instance, like, you know, an accountant has to understand, you know, what are the risks and the security of data that's coming off of a blockchain? How do I integrate that into an accounting system? How do we do internal controls around this data and the processes? You know, how is this data stored and so forth? So again, the technical knowledge is useful, but on the front end, customers don't have to worry about, like, is this blockchain? Is this a traditional database? We're simply able to market it as this is global, secure, accessible data. So, Max, you were going to add something there?
Yeah, I think, you know, we're talking about hype curves and everything. I think, you know, for me, the important aspect and important element of what we're talking about is how do we get a system that can be used across countries, across continents, and is all inclusive. I think that for me is the most important. I'm maybe sounding like a bleeding heart. Don't forget us here in Africa. I always tell the donor community when I talk to them, don't give me a seat at the table, allow me to earn my seat at the table. And, you know, we're going to do that by showing what we can do with our cattle. I do a lot of work here, and this is a bit of an aside. I do a lot of work with rural communities on what we call ethnovet. And what practices were used by rural farmers 20, 30 years ago, my father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, that actually work, but we don't know the scientific reason why. Let's get those herbs or shrubs, send them to a lab, understand, you will start getting things coming out of that. So if we can start being included in the whole thing, you never know, the cure for foot and mouth disease could be sitting in a village 300 kilometers down the road. We don't know, but we need to be integrated. And I think that's the most important thing. We're not supposed to be sitting off the table taking scraps. We need to be integrated, and we need systems that allow us to participate. Now I'm pushing for the African cattle farmer, but take it outside of cattle. I'm talking everything. People need to have not only a voice, but they also need to be understood and heard. And these sort of integrated systems will help that happen.
Yeah, we have I live here in Virginia in the United States, and we have a lot of small share farmers who they sell shares in their cattle, where you can buy basically a dairy share or a share in the animals, and that gives you it's expensive, you know, but it gives you rights to, it's similar to the African system where you then have rights to a certain amount of dairy every week. And when they do slaughter the animal, you have rights to a certain amount of the meat from that animal. And so I think there's a lot of small farmers, you know, if we're trying to democratize a system and we're trying to make it where small farmers and small companies can get into this system and be able to have, let's say, affordable tools that open up their product to the world, provide traceability, and help them to prove the claims that they put on their packages. I think that's really useful. You know, I for a while there, I had it was a meat delivery service. They would deliver every month. They would deliver what they said was sustainable, organic, grass-fed, free range, etc. All of the stuff, and they would box it up and ship it to you in a specialized freezer box, right? And I still remember I got those, and I was just looking at the company, and I was trying to do a little more research on it, and it was continually, to me, it felt like a big question of, how do I know this is true? How do I know you're not just, you know, buying from a feedlot and then slapping these labels on here and then telling me that this is some kind of special cow that maybe it isn't, right? And so creating trust in all of these products and supply chains, I think, is the most compelling answer. I think, Stephen, you had an introductory video where you tell a story about how you kind of came around to getting into this field. Do you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, sure. It was actually my wife and my daughter who started the company. So it's a family company. So my wife and my daughter have some food allergy problems with lactose and gluten intolerances. So they had a problem that to find good products. So they are looking for products without gluten and lactose, of course. And even if they're however careful they're reading the ingredients of products, there are still gluten or lactose in them, and some specifically for lactose. Some product, when they have processed the milk enough times, they don't have to say it's lactose anymore. It's not milk, but still it's in there, so they get sick when they eat it. So they were looking for and trying to do some kind of app for this, where you could scan a QR code, scan the product, and get up the just ingredients of that product in a secure way, so that you could scan and get up like a traffic light, where you scan it, you get green light. Yep, fine, I can buy this product. It's exactly according to my preferences. It's red, don't buy it, and so on. And at the time, I was working with SAP products, and we built a system for seafood. And I realized that here we can use blockchain to do this, to collect all of this data of the ingredients in a secure way from each partner who creates these ingredients, and from the partner who actually creates a product, for the partner who transport this product and who is selling this product. And when we involve all of them in a secure system, and in a system that actually incentivizes them to use it, then we can get all of this information in what we then call a digital product passport. So now we have that solution that my wife and my daughter was looking for 5 years ago. So that's very interesting.
You know, I actually kind of relate to that, because I have my own dairy intolerance to the A1 protein from cows that produce an A1 protein, right? So I've been on this journey of trying to find, in fact, it's recently started appearing on American shelves, A2 milk, where it's A2 cattle. So I've been on this journey where, you know, I'm looking for imported dairy products, right? And I've been trying to figure out, does this come from an A2 cow or is it from an A1 A2 cow, right? And it's gotten to the point where I'm literally trying to look at the company and see if they have pictures of brown cows or spotted cows, because brown cows tend to be A2 A2 and spotted cows tend to be A1 A2, right? So there's a lot of there's a few selections of like imported butter, and like there's a brand from Finland, right? And I'm just trying to sit there and figure out, is this, what kind of cows did this come from? You know, I read somewhere that, well, the majority of cows in India are A2 cows, right? So I'm like, so I think products that are imported from India, dairy products, ghee and so forth, will be okay for me, but I don't know, right? It's this big guessing game, right? I have bad reactions to the A1 protein. So, you know, trying to figure that out and navigate that has been insanely challenging. You can't find butter that is from A2 cows. So, you know, at one point I was making my own butter and cheese at home. Just to try to, because I found one source of A2 cream, heavy cream. But it's expensive, it's laborious, it's time intensive. So, you know, being able to have this kind of data, and being able to have assurance that, okay, this is actually from a cow where I'm not going to have an allergy to this. Or for instance, when we talk about agriculture, right? Some pesticides, people have severe reactions to those pesticides. It's like they don't have a gluten allergy, they have an allergy to the pesticide used on the seed. You know, so what they're looking for is organic wheat that was grown in a place where that pesticide was not applied. So being able to get that information, I mean, that I think is far more compelling. I mean, it's great to have a story of where your cow comes from, but it's even more useful when you have allergies, intolerances, and other things that you're trying to maybe find the origin of this product so that I can determine if this is safe for me to eat.
Exactly. And you are not alone. There is millions and millions of people, and that group is growing that have these problems. And as you said, exactly, it's not always the gluten that is a problem, it's the pesticide that creates these problems. So you are so correct, and this is exactly what the whole company is living for, to be able to, for company to have good products, to be able to prove that they have good products. Not all company wants to prove their product because they are not as good as they are trying to market them, but so that's why we have these tools to enable company to prove what they actually have. So
wonderful. All right, well, look, I want to thank all three panelists for being here. Are there any final closing remarks that we'd like to make for the audience? I think we have answered all of our questions. Let me just check our Q&A. We did have one question. Do you use cloud computing resources for the data storage? And Max said that yes, they do use cloud computing.
The world runs on cloud, so right now.
All right, well then, without further ado, I'm just going to give everyone back another 5 minutes of their day. We appreciate you joining and listening in on this session, and thank you to Stephen and to Chris and to Max for these insights into using blockchain for tracing agriculture and cattle.
yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.